Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's a bit dark and gloomy and rainy here, so my mood is
Oh.
almost exactly the same.
Oh no, you poor thing. The sun's finally come out here, not to rub your nose in it, but it's nearly always dark, gloomy, and miserable in Wales. So yeah, sun's finally here today. I'm gonna go for a walk after we finish.
Oh, awesome. I know that I need to go for a walk because I need to walk my dog afterwards, but I know I'll be
Oh,
like, I don't want to get out of the house when the weather's like this.
same. People who say like, oh, I'll leave the house no matter what the weather is because it's like great for my mental health. I'm like, oh, going out in the cold and the wet is like the worst possible thing for my mental well-being. I'm miserable, I'm cold. It takes me at least like 3 hours to stop feeling miserable and cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I'm not one of those like all weather people. I'm definitely meant for dry. I'm like 22 degrees is good for me. Then I feel
Oh,
like that's I'm optimal, like
uh,
just to be able to do normal stuff.
yeah, I saw that you're moving countries. Is the new country optimal temperature?
Yeah, yeah, I'm going back to Spain. So I've lived in Spain for the last
Awesome.
almost 10 years. Yeah, so I'm going back to just outside Barcelona. So some dry, sunny weather. Although it's been quite cold there as well recently, I think. Not being ideal.
Fingers crossed for optimum.
Yeah, yeah, fingers crossed.
But anyways, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us on
My
this
pleasure.
sunny slash gloomy Thursday afternoon. So you are a burnout and mental well-being expert and coach. Can you talk us more about what like what does that entail for what does it mean for you, and also how you arrived to that point of saying to yourself, I want to do this
Oh,
in my life.
wow. Okay, let's start with the one which is probably a little bit easier. What is it that I do? So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a business kind of coach and consultant that specializes in burnout and mental well-being in the workplace. And I work with, let's say, ambitious but overwhelmed humans or businesses to help them balance their well-being and their professional success. So I do that with one-to-one support, or I do it in group workshops and programs as well. And the idea is really just to help people find a way of balancing all of the things that kind of leave us on the floor exhausted a lot of the time. So yeah,
Mm.
we don't get sucked into that burnout cycle. How did I get here? Well, you create the business that you needed, right? Generally.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I had a horrific burnout that probably started at the beginning of the year. I think now I know in hindsight that I was very burnt out around the January. I ignored it, kept pushing through, got lots of big projects kind of dumped on me. And by the end of that year, what could have been a relatively severe burnout that I might have needed, a little bit of recovery time became 8 months sick, full scale mental health crises, anxiety, depression, all those wonderful things. And then as part of that recovery, I became fascinated by, okay, what is it? 'Cause I had a diagnosis of burnout. What is it that causes it? How can we fix it? And how do we recover? And that's basically what I've been doing, helping organizations to support their teams as well.
Awesome. And how was the um, kind of how is it on the receiving end, or maybe I'm even more interested in hearing um, how many organizations approach you knowing that this is a topic that needs to be talked about versus
Oh,
where you just kind of share experiences and then say, this is what I do, I can help you with this.
yeah. I actually, I'm completely terrible at going out to organisations. So everyone that I speak to comes to me as a rule.
Hmm.
Um, I think last year, the beginning of the year, especially, or sorry, this year, beginning of this year, um, I'm like jumping ahead already. There was a huge interest in mental well-being in the workplace, and everyone seemed to think, yeah, we should be doing this. We need to do more to support our people. And then by the summer, there was a little bit of a crescendo from some big organizations, globally recognized organizations, talking about giving their staff a week off, a day off, extra time for burnout prevention or recovery. And then it seems to have just kind of gone a little bit quiet. So I still get organizations approaching me, but I feel like the focus is squarely on getting people back into work now, as opposed to supporting them, which
Mm.
you know makes me question a little bit the intentions of some organisations at the beginning of the year. And that's not to say that all of them are like it. I've worked with some incredible businesses and individuals who care deeply about making the workplace supportive and fair and flexible. And then there's definitely been a spattering of organizations that perhaps did it to tick a box, a little bit like lots of things like, health and safety and sustainability and
Yeah.
all of those other things, which is good to have on your website and in your business strategy. But in real life, does it happen inside the organization?
Hmm. Um, I feel like this is, I think, like, this is due to something that I always say that for me, it feels like we are working the old way, but in a new system, like in a completely new. Even before COVID, I thought it was new. Now I even more so think that it's new because
Yeah,
when we look at the working hours and the business strategies and everything, it's more kind of machine made, industrial age, where like
completely.
people are not machines, right? And even though like even sometimes machines need to reset and like to have them like you need to put your computer to sleep every once in a while.
Mm,
Um but we are kind of some businesses and organizations, but also individuals. I can like I'll be the first one to put my hand up and be like, I was shit at taking care of myself, of my mental health, of my physical health, of me in general. And I'm
yeah,
curious to hear your opinion on why do you think kind of that is, or more like how do we kind of progress into changing that? Hopefully, or like ideally, without experiencing severe burnout, because that
yeah,
would happen to me too. And that was my wake up call. But if people are already kind of getting hints of some symptoms, how can we make sure that they don't ignore them and be like, okay,
yeah.
like I need something, I need to do something now before it becomes too late.
Yeah, I think the word hints is like really important there. Like I had no idea that my symptoms, and they were pretty severe at one point, way before I kind of got, let's say, in air quotes sick. Um, I had no idea that they were symptoms of burnout. I had no idea that they were symptoms of stress. I just thought that was how you were meant to feel, because those
Mm,
feelings had just gradually got more intense. Like the more adult I became, the further into the working world I got, the higher up the ladder, all of those things.
yeah.
I just thought that that was kind of normal. So the headaches, the broken sleep, upset belly, feeling just a little bit more nervous about going into meeting rooms or having conversations with people that probably wouldn't have phased me at all in the years prior. Um, being really, really aware of how stress affects you personally on a physical level. You'll have lots of telltale signs, common things like I mentioned, stomach and headache, but muscle tension, um, needing the bathroom more often. We often don't realize, lots of dry mouth. All of these things can be indicators that something's not quite right. And then there's the kind of emotional side of it, being a little bit irritable, short-tempered, perhaps withdrawing from people, denying that you're stressed out because you think that you're not, because you
Mm,
just don't even want to admit it to yourself. There's a lot of pride that comes into it. So just really keeping an eye on those things. And I think the easiest way to describe it is that you're looking for a change in you. Like you don't need to wait to kind of pinpoint all the different causes of stress and say, okay, now I've got 10 of these symptoms, it feels like burnout. Is no, like I'm starting to feel different. What's going on? What's causing me to feel like this? um And I think that's probably the most important thing we can all do, is to be really, really self-aware.
Mm.
And then, okay, where's it coming from? What can I do? How can I make this situation easier? Is always the question I ask clients. Like, what is it that you can do right now to take the pressure off? Because we love to think that we have to do everything ourselves. Like, our ego is just this like incredible power that tells us that everything we're doing is essential, and the world will fall apart if we know to slow down on one project. And if we
Yeah.
didn't reply to that email at 11 p.m., then the whole company will come to a grinding halt. Absolute nonsense. And we just don't like to be told that. So yeah, like a little bit of tough love with our ego and getting us to step back and find a way to make our days easier.
I find myself in many of those hints and symptoms, but also behaviors. And I kept thinking to myself, one of the reasons why I was kind of so late, well, yeah, so late with recognizing that something's not quite right is firstly because I didn't have a second of free time to actually think about myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Big
then
problem.
a
Big
big
problem
problem.
indeed. Yeah. I'm
uh,
laughing. It's not funny at all, but yeah,
yeah,
I'm laughing with you, not at you, because I was
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah,
exact same thing.
of course. Yeah, so that was like, that was like in hindsight, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, that's a huge problem, and I know many people will feel the same way. But then I
Yeah.
feel like the crucial thing is once, almost like once those hints and voices become a bit louder, like once those alarms start ringing, like not only vibrating but ringing, when you can't not hear them anymore and not pay attention, then it's the ego. And it's like, but I can, if everyone can do this, I can do it too.
Exactly.
Like, there's no
Yeah.
time for me to take time off or whatever story we feed ourselves at that point. And I, I'm, I'm not a general people pleaser per se. I people please when it comes to people in my authority. So, like, if it's my boss or anyone who I deem respectable in any manner, I don't want to disappoint them. And because of that, I think I wasn't kind of, I wasn't allowing myself to look weak in front of
Yeah.
them. Especially being a millennial and being like, I've heard a lot of times, "Oh, you're such a snowflake." I was like, "Fuck, I'm struggling.
Mm.
I can't show that I'm
Yeah, it's
struggling
awful. Yeah.
because that's a label put entirely on my entire generation, and I just feel like it's unfair."
Yeah, completely. I feel like your first point around not having time, like that's a coping mechanism in itself as well. Like for a lot of us, especially if we, like you mentioned, people pleasing, but kind of in a sense that you don't want to let anyone down that's kind of above you, or has some authority around you. But that overworking, that feeling every second isn't just like a cause of burnout, but it's also a coping mechanism for
Mhm.
a lot of us as well. That we feel that it's just so much easier to push through than it is to stop, admit what's going on, and unpick where it's coming from. Because we've like, and this happens so much more with my female one-to-one clients than with men. I hate to do the whole like gender thing, but I'm just observing,
Mhm.
commenting. Um, and there's this feeling that if we stop and unpick it, what else is going to fall apart? And it takes us so much, generally can take so much more effort and perseverance for female people who identify as female to get to those positions in organizations, that the fear that we choose to challenge what's there and how it's making us feel
Yeah.
is far scarier than the idea of burning out, because we haven't burnt out when we haven't experienced that. Once you do, then you're like, oh, whoa, okay. And it is that kind of like, it feels like burnout is kind of like a rite of passage into like looking after yourself, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But it's just because I feel like we are so afraid of admitting, like that fear of letting someone down, that fear of not proving how competent and capable we are, um, keeps us locked in it, gets us stuck in that stress cycle. And this stress isn't bad for us; it's being stuck in that
Yeah.
position
Yeah.
that is, and that overworking just keeps us stuck. So it's just loop. There's a constant loop, and then we eventually go, oh, I'll have a week off, or I'll get a pay rise, or the project will finish. I'll feel fine. You go back and you just start the whole bloody thing over again. You feel
Yeah.
all right for a week, and then you forget the holiday ever happened, or you forget the pay rises in your bank account, because
Yeah.
you're back in the same old cycle.
Yeah. Oh, so I've never thought about how. So my kind of burnout experience was almost, in retrospect, it was safe, even though it didn't feel safe at the moment.
Mm.
But when I look at it, so I was working in a very small management consulting firm, but I still, like, I had my partner to rely on, and I was able to be like, okay, I'm leaving my job. And as I've said, and maybe to listeners, this will be interesting, because that that kind of time period was when Unsetting Expectations was born. Or rather, if I had never experienced it, I would probably not be doing this now. Um, so in the period of December of 2019 to March of 2020, a mix of really serious family troubles and business issues and challenges, alongside the pandemic that was creeping in. And I've had
Wow.
plans to move to Australia to start my PhD. And I was literally thinking, Franca, you just need to kind of push through until July, and then you'll be happy. July will make you happy. And so I had 6 more months of grippling without letting myself crumble.
Mm.
But then COVID switched everything around. There were no plans anymore. So my travel plans, and before Australia, we will go on a conference in the US for the first time. Like, I was so heavily, so I put all of my eggs in one basket almost. Like, my joy and my happiness relied on traveling to the US for like 3 weeks and then moving to Australia. And
Mm.
then that got taken away from me, as for many other people in the world. And that knocked me really hard. I was still kind of standing, I was swaying around. But then the next day, so in Croatia was put into lockdown on March 21st, I think. And then the next day, March 22nd, Zagreb, where I live, had an earthquake, a really strong one.
Mm.
So it was 5.5 and only 5 kilometers away. So the epicenter was only 5 kilometers away from where I live. And I'm on the top floor, which means there's a lot
Oh
of
my goodness.
lot of swaying around. This room we can't see because of the virtual background, but it still has like dents into walls and cracks,
Oh my
because
goodness.
it was really really strong. And that too, like, I was already like, I was losing my grip, and this earthquake literally just like knocked my ground. And I was like, I felt like I started to fall. I lost control, and me being a complete control freak and relying on safety and stability and at least kind of knowing what my plans are. So basically, like, that was the first time in my life that I stopped being a student. So I just graduated this fall. So I already had an identity crisis.
No.
I stopped working, and I have been working since I was 14. And usually, like, when you combine my schoolwork and full-time work, I didn't have a day off since 14.
Or,
Um,
or, or sleep
or,
maybe
or,
since 14 by the sounds of it.
pretty much, yeah, because sometimes I would work 3 jobs at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then like I didn't feel safe outside because it's the pandemic. I didn't feel safe
Yeah.
in my home because of the family issues. And then I also didn't feel safe physically at home because of the earthquakes. And then the aftershocks, which I really also felt because we are so close. And I just completely lost it. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but now kind of looking at it now, even though it's such a kind of terrifying experience and a terrifying story, I see how, at least that's how it seems for me, what I was thinking while you were saying about how um, um, women in kind of, let's say, women in power or on higher positions, I
Yeah.
think it might be much difficult for them because I had the space to kind of retrieve and be like, I don't have to rely on my job. I have my savings. I have my partner if it needs be to fall back on. I don't have any kids. Like no one
Yeah.
relies on me. It's not necessarily a life or like life or death situation. It felt like that physiologically because I felt
Yeah.
like I'm in survival mode. But
Yeah. You
realistically,
would have been. Your fight or flight was just like,
yeah,
massively activated by everything going on
yeah,
around you at that
yeah, a
point.
100%. I couldn't kind of, I couldn't read two sentences and piece them together by September of that year. So for 6 months,
Mm.
I was a vegetable almost. Like I
Yeah.
was a zombie, but I almost had it in, let's say, safe environment. Like it was still, like it was still manageable. And now if I think about if I was like, I don't know, I in a high management position or in a like even higher, like a top management position in a corporate organization, I would have had it so much worse with paired with the entire with everything else from my story,
Yeah.
because I would literally feel like that part that additional heaviness, like the company is relying upon me. Like now I know at the worst thing could be I am replaceable and everyone is replaceable, so
Yeah.
I
We don't like
shouldn't.
to admit it, but we all are. They'd be
Yes,
hiring someone within a month, It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's the
And
truth.
then kind of in that sense now I know that I can just like I'll quit my job and I'll take care of after myself. But that's easy for me to say now after going through that, but in that period I know that I will just have stuck around, and God knows,
Completely.
oh Jesus, like God knows where I will end up, like in a year or
Yeah.
3 years, probably hospitalized because I
Yeah.
didn't act where when I needed.
Yeah, completely. That there's that, when we have a safety net. I also don't have a family, but at that when I was sick, I was living on my own in the center of Barcelona in a very expensive flat. I didn't have anyone that was going to pay my rent or my bills.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, it took me 8 months to get to the point where I was like, I can't go back there in those conditions, and the conditions weren't going to change. So I decided to just sell up and get rid of everything. um, but that's a luxury that I have as a you know privileged 30, what was I then, like 34, 35 year old, um, that isn't always available. And people do definitely get stuck in that. That's why it's so important to capture early on, because when it gets to that point, literally the I was kind of not, I say threatened, it was doesn't it sounds like really dramatic when I say that, but my psychiatrist, because I was in such a state that I was constantly in a doctor's appointment, was kind of like, you're gonna have to stay in hospital. And that was the thing that I was like, okay, this is really terrifying,
wow.
because and it was from ignoring burnout. It wasn't that I'd never had any underlying mental health issues. I'd burnt out several times before. Now I know that, because I've researched it so much and work with so many other people. I'd burnt out several times before, but they kind of gradually got more severe. And it was that last one, because I just felt like it was normal, and I felt like I'd overcome it. And I felt like I'd been in a situation like that in far more stressful roles, in far bigger roles, in
Mm,
fact. But it didn't matter, because, like you said, like that fight or flight response had been so active, so activated in me for so long, that my brain, like you said, a vegetable, I literally couldn't do anything. And that wasn't me, that's science. Like the impact that burnout has on our on a bit of our brain that helps us to reason and helps us with logic and emotional processing and controlling our emotions, it has the same impact as aging does. Like there's not massive evidence on this yet, but it shows that our cognitive abilities begin to deplete, and it can last for like 2-3 years afterwards as well. Like really concentrating, the brain fog, forgetfulness, indecision, all really common bits in burnout. And the problem is when you get to that state and you've got to make a decision like, do I stay? Do I carry on? How do I look after my family? How do I make the right decision? You can't do a bloody thing, because your brain literally, like, it's not that you're unable as an individual, it's your
Yeah.
brain has been
Yeah.
pushed so far that it doesn't have anything left to
Yeah.
make those big decisions for you. Anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, because I feel very passionately about this, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But it's really so important to catch it early on, and to look out for those changes in your emotional state, changes in your cognitive ability. Like, are you walking into rooms all the time? Are you unable to finish a sentence? Do you forget a thought halfway through? Physically, what's going on with you as well? Are
Yeah.
you starting to get distant from work? Are you feeling quite jaded? Is that normal for you? All of
Yeah.
those things, the sooner you catch them, the better, because you don't end up in a state taking lots of time off, and you don't have to make those huge decisions if you are supporting other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, sooner is always better.
Yeah. And so what can we do once we now you've kind of listed a number of hints and triggers and kind of little alarms that we need to pay attention to day to day. What can we do when we kind of think, okay, 8 out of 10?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
now?
So
What now?
8 out of 10, eight stars. They're not stars. They're like thumbs down. If they're any good, if they're going to be any sort of icon, it'll be a thumbs down. So yeah, if you've got a load of unhappy emojis, um, then the first thing to do as soon as you notice that, to try and understand what's causing it. I always start with the external, because that's usually the easiest for people to kind of get their head around, and we need a little bit of breathing space. So what's triggering you externally? Is it an individual? Is it a situation? Is it an environment? And get as specific as possible, because when we talk about things in general terms, like, oh, I've just got a lot on, or I'm just a bit tired, we can't fix it. It makes it very, very hard. It's like, well, oh, what, get a bit sleep. No. Why are you tired? What's making you feel exhausted? What is it that's keeping you in work too long? Or what is it that's stopping you sleeping? And really, really dig down into that and start to think, okay, how can I take the pressure off? So we always have some control. We don't think it. We think we've got to do everything. I mentioned the ego coming into it earlier. But also, who can I ask for help? And that doesn't have to necessarily be like a colleague or a client or your manager. It could be, can I get some help at home just to take the pressure off, so when I finish my day, my brain can just stop, that I'm not running around the house, or I haven't got to think about childcare or dinner or coordinating all those kind of life admin things as well. Like, just really trying to take the pressure off. And the next step then is looking at you as a kind of individual. This is like the deeper work, trying to understand how your behaviors influence that state. Like, how did you end up getting there? Like, with clients, I use a structure called, where we look at the drivers of behavior. Are you a perfectionist? Are you always trying to go too fast? Are you always trying to overwork? And these things aren't negative necessarily, because in the right environment, they're fantastic and they help us achieve. Like, I use the example of a perfectionism and a surgeon really often, because I think it like illustrates just how brilliant these skills are, but also how harmful they can be. So if you're a surgeon, or if you're going in for an operation, you want that surgeon to be bloody accurate, right? You want them to be a perfectionist. Skill, precision, really caring about every little detail. If that same person is in front of you in the supermarket, packing their bags with the same kind of accuracy and precision, and you're trying to get home for, I don't know, watch something on the TV, or you've got an important date, you're going to start getting very, very frustrated with them, because they're using brilliant skills in the wrong environment. So it's about context, and it's not about saying all of the things that you do, all your behaviors are making you, more stressed or more burnt out than you should be. It's about starting to ask ourselves, okay, do I need to do every single task at A star level? Is done enough sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Starting to really look at ourselves and becoming internally self-aware. And then you get into all the practical stuff, you know, like looking at how do you manage your time? How do you set boundaries with people? And how do you prioritize your needs, like not just at the end of the month or at a long weekend every now and again, but on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So you don't just remove the stressors, you actually do something to process that stress and remove it from your body.
Mm. What I really, where do I hear myself double? Can you hear me double as well?
I did for a tiny second, but not anymore.
Oh, okay, awesome. Um, so I, what I think is really funny for me is that when I became self-employed, which is basically around this time last year, I thought, okay, now I will set up my life and my systems the way that I want to, and so there is no way I can experience burnout. I was very wrong. Because as for some reason, I thought that, so I almost attributed only the external stressors and only the external kind of triggers to burnout.
Yeah.
And now I'm realizing, because I am a perfectionist and an overachiever, I tend not to overwork now because I know where overwork has gotten me. But like, so especially like even this period, let's say the last 2 weeks, and I was a bit more stressed because of the driving license exam and everything. I was really overwhelmed. I can now kind of, I sense something's out of tune within myself, and I do check a couple of the boxes that you listed, which are not like, I almost like I'm smiling because it's ironic for me, because how just how wrong I was, because I thought being my own boss and setting my own rules surely must mean I can't burn out, because I make sure I don't work more than 20 and 25 hours per week. I do a lot of psychotherapy and coaching and counseling because I'm still a work in progress on my own. When I made the decision to stop, I say that I stopped running, and I finally kind of embraced stillness, or
Yeah.
tried to embrace stillness. um, I was like, okay, so now I need to face the 26 years I had been running away from. And that's my full-time job, basically. That's been my full-time job for the past year and a half. So my businesses have, like, my businesses are part-time. And I'm also a student, which doesn't help, but I don't spend a lot of time studying. And I do okay. So that's that's okay. It's like it's so small on the entire scale that I sometimes even forget to mention people that I'm a master student. But yeah, so um, I'm currently in the moment where I'm kind of realizing that I may be burning myself out,
Yeah.
which feels tragic, because I feel this one may be, so when we include the ego in the story, right? So previously, everyone else were to blame for my burnout, but now there's just me.
It's like, oh no, what am I doing?
Yes,
No.
yes, and
Yeah.
especially for the entire time, as I said, like I thought that I did everything right, that I played by the book, I followed all the rules. Then why do I still feel the same? And I think kind of knowing myself, or rather starting and getting to know myself in this past 18 months or so, is I um, I compete with myself in my head in scenarios that don't yet exist.
Yeah.
So like I may be now here with you, but basically my mind is like already 15 years ahead, criticizing something that I haven't done or could have done better. It's like I'm building and building and building, and then that's paralyzing me in the moment because I can't do anything. Like I can't do my first next step because I'm already wondering why. Like what's the point if all of this is going to happen that I imagined in my head.
Yeah.
And basically, I am self-imposing burnout on me with things I haven't even done, realistically.
There's so much to unpack in all of that. There's like
Yeah.
just loads and loads. But yeah, there's like that internal bit. This is why I said like the first thing I do is like look at the external stresses, because that's what everyone wants to do. We always want to point our finger at the things around us, and it's really difficult to even begin to do that like internal work. And you said, you know, it's your full-time job, and it is like an absolute full-time job. It's not like you take a day off from it. You've always got to be thinking, okay, like how am I looking after myself? How am I feeding into all of this? But doing the internal bit and starting to understand that our beliefs and behaviors are the things that get us stuck in that cycle. Because, you know, it's so easy to point the finger, but if it's just us running our business, or even if you're in an organization, we are in control. We like to feel like we're not. We like to feel like we're kind of victims of the system or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but we're just not. Um, and the sooner we take a kind of responsibility for, I think setting boundaries with ourselves is probably the very first thing, and then look for that softness. Like I was talking about this, I just finished a program I've been running on breaking the burnout cycles. I just did the last a week yesterday, and we were talking about, you know, burnout for me is so much about hardness, about being really hard on ourselves, pushing ourselves too hard in work, maybe even being hard on each other, on others. Sorry, having like really high expectations, like you were saying about you're burning yourself out with plans for the future that haven't even happened yet, and you're worrying about that shining, you know, future thing. And we need softness, like we do, like we need like we really need that opposite when, especially when you've gone through burnout, if you're very close to it. We need that softness. Like we need flexibility with work, we need flexibility with our mind. Like don't constantly be looking to try and make things more difficult or harder. Like how can you make it soft, how can you make it easy, how can you make it gentle?
Mm.
We really do need like somewhere kind of cozy and soft just to like rebalance ourselves. Not to say we'll never be hard on ourselves or do
Yeah.
hard things
Yeah.
again, but we need that time to recover, you know. So yeah, like looking for the next big hard thing when you haven't even enjoyed where you're at is definitely, it's like that's like the end thing in burnout, right? It's like that feeling. The World Health Organization say lack of self-efficacy, and I really can't stand their definition. I don't use that with I just think it's the most pointless, inhuman, like three categories of any sort of. I know it's very well spoken about, and I'm probably going to get slated for saying that, but you know, here I am saying it anyway. But yeah, lack of self-efficacy is that feeling that we just haven't achieved, and we get that when we're constantly looking at the next thing and not appreciating where we're at, like
Yeah.
being too hard on ourselves and not kind of looking for the softness and the joy in where we're at.
Yeah. Oh, I that really hits home for me because I still feel incapable of looking back and feeling um, satisfaction from my previous
Yeah.
accomplishments. It feels like someone else has done them, but they are in my name.
Oh,
um, and that's largely because when I was doing them, I was already thinking about not the next thing, but like the five things ahead of that thing that I was doing. I was
yeah,
never connected to the moment as I was going through whatever it was that got me the achievement. And hence I have no recollection of it ever
yeah,
happening. It's really weird. And this is the first thing I've said it out loud like that because I didn't kind of connect the dots in that way before. I always knew I kind of felt disconnected from them, but I couldn't kind of figure out why. And I think this is it. It's basically, I was like, if I was 21, I was thinking about what am I doing when I'm 25.
yeah,
And I was just kind of, I feel like I was ghosting throughout my
yeah,
life. Whereas now I'm trying to be kind of firm and whole and visible and take up space and go through every moment presently. But that still means that kind of like I struggle with kind of accepting that these past 26 years of my life have been my life.
Yeah. We're not taught to stand still and to celebrate, like especially celebrating, and that's kind of what we need. We need to like mark the occasion and get that little
Mm,
dopamine hit, just like you would when you tick something off our list.
yeah.
But we don't. We tick it off the list and then look at the next item. Whereas we should really be appreciating it, celebrating our successes, our wins, our, every little small step forward we take, even if it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
still progress, right? And it takes practice. Like if you've been doing that for 26 years, you're not all of a sudden going to make a decision to be present and then all of a sudden be really present and like full of satisfaction and everything else that you're looking for. No, it's a muscle. Like we need to just keep doing it and be kind to ourselves when we go back into those old habits and start, panicking about the future. So I'm naturally the like really anxious person,
Mm,
constantly like I love problem solving, I love thinking of opportunities. So my brain naturally goes into that mode. And sometimes I could just not do it and life could be really easy. And I forget that. And I need to
yeah,
constantly remind myself. It's like that's why I say, like, how can it be easier? Like what can I do to just not worry about that? Just, just to give myself a bit of breathing space and be a
yeah,
bit gentler. Definitely recommend just looking for like how you can make things easier. So
yeah.
always.
But that's well, like that's the thing, right? We until you've said it, until you've articulated it now, I wouldn't have thought of I can just stop thinking about it. Like I can just
Of course not. Your brain's not going to let you do that. It's going to know you need to keep thinking about the future. Keep thinking about the future, Frank. Keep worrying because you need to keep achieving. Don't worry about all the other stuff you've done. You just
yeah,
keep going, girl.
yeah,
It's just, we're conditioned to do that, right? Like corporate world doesn't say, oh, well done, you got to the end of the quarter. Let's, okay, you might have a quick like review of how far you've done, a little retro or
mm,
something. But it's real. It's like, they're like, right, next quarter we're doing this, end of your targets we're doing this. So we take that into our own businesses and even into our own private lives. Like when I decided to quit my job, built a spreadsheet to track my progress
mhm.
between like, leaving my house and going traveling. Just, I had a full Gantt chart about all the different things I needed to do rather than just enjoying the fact that I had some freedom. I was like, right, where am I going to go next with this freedom? It's just ridiculous. Like luckily I don't do this anymore, not as much anyway. But yeah, we carry over all of that like, expectation and pushing and pushing
Yeah,
and pushing into our lives, and yeah, we don't have to.
yeah. I think
No one's telling us to do it, right? No one's forcing us to do that. It's all on us.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a very important kind of separation because um, no one is directly telling us to do that, even though it's kind of socially implied, right? It's like uh, when you finish high school, what are you going to go? Where are you going to go for college? What do you want to graduate? When you graduate, what's the job you're going to get? When you get the job, when are you
Yeah.
getting married? When you get married, when are you
When are
having
you
your
having
first kid?
kids? When's the next kid?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it goes on and on and
constantly,
on.
yeah, and just like, and yeah, we don't um, remotely stop and be like, oh my god, this is happening. I always ask my friends because I'm really curious, like when they get engaged, that's something that really boggles me. It's like they get engaged and already like the next day they know the date and the band and everything. I was like, you just got engaged, like don't you want to stay engaged for like at least 3 months without thinking about the wedding and just like kind of
Yeah,
appreciate the engagement? Because it feels like at least it's how it's here culturally in Croatia. Once you get engaged, everyone asks, well, have you set the date? I was like, and I say always to my friends and family, like if I ever get engaged, I'll be like, I won't get married for at least 3 years because 1 year I just want to enjoy, and
to
then
chill
two
out and
years I'll
enjoy
spend
it.
planning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I got engaged. When was it? The February of 2020? Yeah, so just it was not long after I'd kind of gone traveling and
Mm,
started, trying to recover and everything. And we had no plans of the wedding because we were living in Spain. I'm British, he's American. And then in May of this year, we were like, should we just get married? So but just the two of us, because
yeah,
with my idea of how can we make this easier? How can we make life easy? So the two of us got married in September because for exactly that reason, because I couldn't imagine doing all of that stuff and making all of those, it's just like, it feels like a huge project.
Mm.
And yeah, we didn't even think about it until this May this year. And then we just thought, right, okay, let's make this easy and fun. And that was how we did it. So there's no rules, right? Or if there are, they're just made up by
Made up.
someone anyway.
Yeah.
Like who makes them up? No, like no one. They're just there. Like, so we can just make up our own ones, right? And do
Yeah.
whatever we want. And not just about weddings, like whatever, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. And I keep going around at my friends and family when they say, "But you need to do that." I was like, "Can you show me where is that written?
Yeah.
Can you imply show me the proof?" And I like if you show me the book and the rule where it's written, then I may consider it. Without that,
Yeah.
I'm not like I don't even care.
Yeah. I think it makes life a lot easier, right? When we remember that anything that's gone before us has just been made up by someone, unless it's like written into law. And even law in a lot of places is nonsense as well. But that's not a conversation for now.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
outdated ideas that have just kind of perpetuated because they were put into some statute at some point. But yeah, we can just do what we want a lot of the time, and there's no one putting the pressure on us apart from us, letting
I'm
go and setting the expectation that we need
yeah.
to be doing all of these things all of the time.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your stance on this because so you've said that realizing that you have the power to choose what you want to do for yourself and kind of pursuing that is easy. And I agree to your point because I feel like kind of doing that, and I've done this my entire life. I question everything. I'm like status quo is something that's not a familiar term for me. Like I literally question everything, and I've been like an
Why?
annoyance to
Why?
my
Why?
teachers, to my parents, to everyone around me. A big annoyance, and I tend to do a lot of things in a very unconventional way. But and that's the easy part for me. So I do feel really free and flowy and creative and inspired when I do them. But then where I struggle and when it gets heavy is where I can't kind of I can't mute those closest ones around me that are doing everything traditionally, and then here I am doing
Mm,
something completely different. I must be acting like I must be insane. And because I kind of get in these moments of sometimes I don't care if it's a good day, I won't care. But if I'm kind of in a bad headspace, and then I start to think, but well, Franca, you are only one, and you are doing this that way. Your friends and family and society at large are like thousands and hundreds of thousands, and they are mostly doing this the exact same way, all of them. You must be the insane one. And then it's that kind of separation and kind of reminding myself that what they have done is just like at one point someone did something for the first time, right? It was still new, but because it's easy or forever for whatever other reason, others started kind of um, going through this going through the same path as that first someone who did that something for the
yeah.
first time. And yeah, my kind of challenge on a bad day lies in kind of not comparing, let's say, my playground with their playgrounds. And I think uh, what I think I've spoken with to a friend about this just yesterday, and I said that I need to stop thinking that quantity means quality, right? Because
Mm,
it's hundreds of thousands of people doing something the same way or very similarly. Doesn't
yeah.
mean that the way I do it, because I'm the only one, or that I know that I'm the only one doing it that way, means that my way is less valuable or wrong or anything
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, I got this huge question to just to lay on me. Thanks for that one.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Let me see if I can like pick the thread through it. So I definitely find myself in this camp, especially like I'm my late 30s. I've only just got married. I decided to quit a very, nice career and start my own business and
Mm,
travel and do all of those different things. And my mates are all buying newer, bigger houses and fancier cars and having second or third children. And I definitely on some days feel like, oh, have I made the right decision? Is this what I need right now in my life? And the answer is you just don't know. Like you've got to do what's like what feels the best for you, right? And just because other people are doing it, it doesn't mean that it's the right way or the best way. Like look at the state of the world without getting like really like miserable about it. Like the environment. Can I swear?
yeah.
Like, yeah, fucked. Our mental health, fucked. Look at the rates of like burnout, anxiety, depression. Just there's so much that doesn't work. So just because we're choosing to not go into that, no shade on people who are doing it well. Some people, yeah, they're doing things which are really shitty. Um, but like that's like, good for them. If that's what makes them happy and that's what they need to do and want to do, and that's how they feel safest, fine. But it doesn't mean that it's the best way or the right excuse me, the right way. And that's the thing that I try and keep in my mind is like, yeah, I've made this choice. And like I have conversations with my other half and I'm like, oh, this feels a bit scary sometimes, like constantly moving, constantly living out of bags. And I'm like that feeling of being a bit behind when, in my early 20s, I definitely felt like I was the one that was kind of ahead, if
Mm,
that makes sense,
yeah.
with my house and everything else. And I think, well, this is the life that I've chosen and they're my values. And I think that's a really important baseline. And like I speak a lot about it with clients, like what is important for you might not be important for someone else. And you need to figure out what it is that you value and what it is that makes you feel good and make your decisions based on that. As long as it's not harming somebody else, you have to have a little bit of like, just be a bit brave and have a little bit of conviction about it. And you haven't got to do everything all at once. You can take small steps, make small changes. I'm not saying that everyone needs to like quit their job and run off to the jungle. It's a privileged position to be in, but
Yeah.
that it's really really a case of figuring out what's right for you and accepting that there's lots of different ways to do brilliant things.
Mm, I love that. And kind of to conclude everything up, and I literally have a post-it on my PC that says one next step. What will be your kind of um, almost like a direction to see to like for people to be like how do you start with your one next step, because usually right we make our next step really big and
Yeah,
then it's like
huge.
it's huge
Yeah,
and it's paralyzing and it's like, oh, I just want to scream and hide under my blanket and never do anything again in my life. So how do we start uh, mindfully with our one next step, and bearing in mind that we want to kind of build our path that's a sustainable one, so that we
yeah.
minimize even the symptoms and hints of burnout and experiencing burnout in the last place.
I think you're so right about making the next step huge, and it feels so overwhelming and we don't know where to start with it. And it sounds really basic, but you just break it down, like break it down until it's so tiny that it's the easiest thing you could possibly do, not like the next big step or the next little steps, like the very very first minute thing that you can do that will move you towards feeling better. You can look at doing some work around your values and investigating what's important. The world's changed massively in the last 2 years or 20 something months. um, what you used to get energy from or what used to work when you were feeling stressed possibly doesn't now. So figuring that out and just inching towards it. What is that like? Getting an early night? What is that? Speaking to a manager? What is that? Just buying a self-help book. It sounds really naff, but like they can be tiny 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 little things. They don't have to be life changing. And all of them gradually will add up. And the more you do them, the more confidence you'll get,
Mm.
and the easier it'll be to do again. It's like teaching yourself that it is safe to look after you, and it is safe to put your needs first. And we're not shown that by anyone else. No one's going to give us permission to do that. So it really has to come from us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love how that this is how we conclude the conversation, because it feels inspiring and gent like it's not a push, but it's just like a gentle move, kind of a gentle shift towards.
Yeah.
I don't feel, like I don't feel itchy about I need to start doing something, even though like sometimes that itch is good. But now I just feel kind of curiously provoked with my own thoughts and how they are currently flowing. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Likewise. And where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, which is www.kdp.coach. Or I'm over on Instagram as Katie Phil, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, Katie Phillips. I'm sure there'll be some links or notes that you can put them in, right?
Yes, of course. So yeah, so in the podcast description, once it's uploaded, next week, everyone will have access to all of the links that you just mentioned.
Great.
Okay, awesome, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Lovely. Have a good afternoon.
Likewise, thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.